Canadians are still being debanked. Actually, a lawyer just got debanked for quite literally unknown reasons and unsubstantiated reasons by Canada's largest bank, RBC. And then we also have an update on the Chris Barber and Tamara Leach case that is still ongoing, and free trade between Canada and America. Is it dead? What's it going to look like in the near future? Everything about these topics is discussed in this video, and I do hope you stick around for the full thing for context. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I really want to encourage you guys to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel. Without further ado, let's get into this because this is absolutely insane. So just moments ago, Freedom Convoy lawyer Eva posted on X, and I mean, it almost has 200,000 views in the first hour. Well, I wasn't expecting this, RBC, but here I've been debanked. So here we go. Let's take a look. Personal and confidential. Termination of banking relationship. As a federally regulated financial institution, RBC is required by law to comply with applicable legislation. These laws require that we implement certain processes and procedures which directly support the formulation of RBC's position with risk, or with respect to risk. We recognize that you will need to seek an alternative financial institution to support your banking needs, and we ask that you do so no later than August 18th. And this was, I mean, this is absolutely freaking insane. And this was submitted on June 17th, or sorry, July 17th. I guess she just opened her mail now. So there you go. She's got 1 month to find new banking. Now, already the good news is that she's found a banking solution right here. Bow Valley Credit Union is going to be, I mean, Eva's new banking system, but you can see the outrage in the comments. Tracy Wilson, did they say what activity? Eva replies, all I know is what's in the letter. This was my last interaction. They said all is well and just remain careful at the end. Let's take a listen to this. It's audio only.
So what was your first question again?
The first question was, how did you learn about this opportunity with the cryptocurrency?
Yeah, I was at a Bitcoin conference.
Okay. Is there a third party involved, or is this all on your own merit?
Yeah, it's all on my own merit. And just for the recording, I'm doing this totally against my will because Royal Bank is not allowing me to access my own money without these questions being answered that I totally am not comfortable with. Okay. Continue.
Do you have full access to your own crypto wallet?
Yes, I do.
Access. Okay. Are you able to withdraw funds from there if you need from the cryptocurrency?
Of course I can. It's much easier than the way Royal Bank is treating me at the moment, in fact.
That's fair. I'm just asking you some questions.
Yeah, which are, that you've made up.
Were you promised a specific rate of return on
No, I wasn't.
Okay. Were you asked to install any software on your computer?
No, I wasn't.
Okay. How long have you been investing in crypto approximately? Is this a brand new thing?
No, years.
Years? Okay. And you are able to sign into the crypto website yourself, sell, trade, and withdraw all on your
Much
own.
Easier than with the Royal Bank, as I'm experiencing right now.
I will answer those questions and I will get back to you.
Thank you so much.
So does it seem like maybe her bank is shutting down because of potential for fraud or scam? Somebody says, to be fair, many people are scammed into moving money into the hands of fraudsters. Royal Bank is asking these questions to protect you. And Eva said, I told them it was legit on the phone. I told them it was legit in person. Then they proceeded to ask questions after I repeatedly confirmed it was legit. I mean, this is an absolute, freaking grotesque abuse of power. And a lot of people are saying go to Bitcoin because it seems to solve all of that. And for those that are wondering if it's fake, Eva says, well, no, it's not, and provides an actual photo with it on her desk, which matches everything that was in the original screenshot or photo of the letter, to which I replied, what the actual F? What the heck is this? This is messed up. I mean, it's just outrage beyond belief. Even Rise of Alberta says RBC just debanked Eva. It's not a bank anymore. They're an arm of political censorship. Welcome to Canada's version of democracy. Obey or you will be debanked, which is insane because debanking actually came up, or I guess freezing of assets came up today in Tamara Leach and Chris Barber's trial, where the judge didn't even know that was even the thing, that anyone's banks got frozen, assets got seized and frozen. And so it's just a weird, like, why today? Like, what? I mean, it's horrible that this is happening, but is the coincidence, the parallels of everything, it's weird. It's absolutely gross. I'd love to know what you guys think down below in the comments about this. And then we got to take a look here at Ezra Levant's live tweeting thread of the vendetta trial, or the vendetta, not the trial, the 7 years of vendetta that the government is seeking against Tamara and Chris. So the Diane Magnus, a lawyer for Chris Barber, was on her feet earlier this morning. The prosecution made their case, such as it was. Lawrence Greenspoon, tomorrow's lawyer, is going to go next. Magnus is given examples of how her client Chris Barber does not control the truckers. The judge points out that Barber moved his truck called Big Red to compromise with city police, which is exactly how things went. Meanwhile, while Ezra was inside the courthouse live tweeting, you had one of his employees who was outside asking residents of Ottawa questions about what they think about the Freedom Convoy.
Quickly, what did you think of the Freedom Convoy?
I think it was horrendous, right? I mean, these were terrorists causing grief to all of the residents of Ottawa. Frankly, embarrassing Canadians like ourselves, embarrassing Albertans like ourselves. I wish they never did that, and I really do hope that they get what they deserve.
Wow, man. Calling truckers, calling people that were peacefully protesting terrorists is, I mean, freaking insane. Absolutely insane. And so let's take a look here at what the summary of the day kind of ended, right? Magnus Barber was surrounding himself with lawyers to try to make sure he did things legally. It goes to moral blameworthiness being much lower. He cared about his legal obligations. And that just kind of wrapped up the day. I mean, that absolutely wrapped up the day. In terms of the outcome from today, there is no real outcome, but the right blend also has this to say in video format, which summarizes, you know, what happened today in court. Now, if you want to watch the full video, highly recommend you go check it out on his channel, on his X account, but we're just going to listen to the first minute here.
The Crown finally followed through on something. They said that they would be done by noon, and they were, because apparently they've submitted 40-plus pages of submissions for their sentencing request in seeking 7 years for Tamara Leach for 1 count of mischief and 8 years for Chris Barber for 1 count of mischief and 1 count of counseling disobey a court order. Now, this is, of course, not precedent. The Crown themselves said there's no other case like this, but in jurisprudence sense, there are other cases related to the Freedom Convoy. Specifically, Pat King comes to mind, decided about late last year, sentenced earlier this year, of a person. He was convicted of 5 charges, where Tamara's convicted of 1 and Chris of 2, and he was sentenced to a 1-year combined sentence, including 9 months pretrial custody credit and a 3-month custody, conditional sentence, house arrest in the community, which he served. He's now on probation. But the Crown's theme, besides the political prosecution here, because this would not be happening if it wasn't for the political undertones and I'd say directions, that it wouldn't be going this way at all. The theme of their case has always been to eat their cake and have it too, because, for example, they're saying, well, there's no case quite like this one, but then they'll cite King with Justice Hackland's decision in the Superior Court of Justice, which is Ontario's highest trial court above the Ontario Court of Justice, where they want to, because in that case, Hackland said things like the Freedom Convoy constituted a mass mischief. So they'll cite that. They'll cite the comments they like, but they won't cite the fact that.
Yeah, I mean, for full context, the charges, or I guess the severity of mischief that Tamara and Chris are facing is the same that you would get if you were to go do burnouts in an empty parking lot and a cop gave you a ticket. That would be mischief. So does that deserve 8 years? No, absolutely not. Now, even the anti-lawyer of the Freedom Convoy, right? The Paul Champ, whatever the hell his name was or is, he even said that, you know, they should just get off with time that's already been served. And I think a maximum of 6 years, or sorry, not 6 years, 6 months for Chris Barber. That's what he recommended. So you even have people that are very much against the convoy coming out and saying this is absolutely ridiculous. And so on that note, we're going to shift topics. But before we do, I'd love to know what you guys think down below in the comments. Do you think that Chris and Tamara should be able to just walk out of this and it be considered already time served? Or do you think that there should be a different sentencing? Love to know what you guys think down below. And since we are talking about just absolutely bananas, banana republic, even the state here in Canada, we got to talk about this new CBC video that just dropped. Is Canada and US free trade dead? Let's have a look.
Free trade is not what most people think it is. It's not really free, and it might be about to become dramatically less free long term, maybe for good. When Canada's Prime Minister was asked this question in French about whether a trade deal with the US without tariffs was possible, he said,
Il n'y a pas beaucoup d'évidence à ce moment-ci.
There's not a lot of evidence that any country in the world can escape Trump's tariffs.
I'm a tariff person. I've always been a tariff. It's simple, it's easy, it's precise, and it just goes very quickly.
The concept of continental free trade has been enshrined in law for almost as long as I've been alive, and for nearly as long, it has been seen as a critical economic but also strategic tool to grow the global economy on US-friendly terms.
I'm sending to the Congress what will be one of the most historic pieces of legislation during my presidency. Implementing legislation for the U.S.-Canada Free Trade Agreement.
But there are signs it could be on its way out, if it was ever more than an illusion to begin with.
I mean, you have a pipeline that is the whole point of this new pipeline that apparently all of our premiers are working together on is to phase America out of, you know, not just trade, but specifically trade with oil and gas. The premiers and the prime minister, this whole Canada First movement is about less reliance on America, but not just a little bit less trade, ultimately significantly less, to the point where there's almost no trade with America. I personally believe that that's the wrong move. I think that we should be doubling down on our trade with America, but I mean, that's just my opinion, right? I could be very much wrong.
You know the notion of free trade is strained when Mark Carney calls it almost free trade, with a long list of exceptions.
En effet, presque le libre-échange qui continue. Mais il y a des problèmes, évidemment, dans le secteur de l'acier, l'automobile, l'aluminium, le pharmaceutique et les autres bois d'œuvre et tout cela.
Because in those problem sectors he mentions, steel, cars, aluminum, free trade doesn't exist. In some cases, it hasn't for years, and the cost is only going up. In March, Donald Trump put a 25% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum. In April, he put a 25% tariff on the Canadian content in cars. And in June, he slapped an additional 25% tariff on steel and aluminum.
The likelihood of living with tariffs is very much a possibility. We are very much looking at a situation where we likely will have some form of tariffs. They may not be lifted, if they are at all, until next year.
And Canada has retaliated against some of these tariffs in kind, with matching percentages, with the threat of also taking tariffs on American steel and aluminum up from 25% to 50%, just like the US, if the two sides can't reach a deal to ratchet things down. And pharmaceuticals, yet another potential free trade exception. And these exceptions all stack on top of another set of broad-based tariffs Trump has threatened. Starting August 1st, 2025, we will charge Canada a tariff of 35% on Canadian products sent into the United States, separate from all sectoral tariffs.
This is going to fix the trade deficit. This will go a long way to fixing the trade deficit.
So this
And Canada's new way of saying haha to the trade deficit, claims is, how about we just don't trade with you, we trade with other countries, and then we trade within our own provinces. That's the mentality. I don't know, like I'm not in the mind of a politician, I'm just a normal freaking dude, but I don't think that that's a good move. I think we should be looking to lower the heated relationship that we have with America currently, to then double down on trade with essentially the free world. I don't think that we should be looking elsewhere as strongly as what our liberal leaders seem to think that we should be doing. But again, I'm just a freaking normal guy, borderline idiot, probably am full idiot.
This is the state of free trade today. And think about where it might be heading. This new threat of a 35% broad tariff on Canadian goods, it actually does not apply to goods that fall under North America's current free trade agreement, which allows products through borders duty-free if they're sufficiently North American. So, for example, if you've got a shoe assembled in Canada, but made entirely with Chinese rubber and Korean fabric, and let's say a big part of that shoe's value comes from overseas, that's likely not covered under this deal and would be subject to the 35% tariff. At the outset of the trade war, the White House estimated most Canadian exports to the U.S., 62%, did not technically fall under the trade deal, in part because some companies actually preferred to pay very low duty rates rather than fill out the paperwork to prove that they're trade deal compliant. But a recent RBC report suggests as Trump began piling on tariff after tariff, almost 90% of Canadian exports seem to have entered the U.S. duty-free. That's a big shift in compliance. So whether by rejigging their supply chains or just deciding to fill out the paperwork, more and more trade has started to fall under the umbrella of this agreement.
It becomes very important because when the average tariff for the United States was about 2% or so, whether you were USMCA compliant or not, didn't make a huge difference when you're trading across North America. But if the tariffs go up to 10% or more, obviously you want that duty-free treatment.
And it does mean next year's renegotiation of CUSMA becomes all the more important.
And this is one great area of uncertainty when it comes to free trade in North America. CUSMA, or the USMCA, depending on where you live and what you call it, it's up for renegotiation next year, and the U.S. seems dead set on changing the terms.
Are you going to renegotiate that free trade deal, the USMCA?
Oh, I think the president is absolutely going to renegotiate USMCA. Okay. It makes perfect sense for the president to renegotiate it. He wants to protect American jobs. He doesn't want cars built in Canada or Mexico when they could be built in Michigan and Ohio.
He continues to be interested in autos. So we saw the rules of origin tightened with the USMCA as opposed to NAFTA. So there could be a further tightening there or a more U.S. content requirement.
But here's the thing. The best anyone can do.
So this makes sense as to why you have Canada going so hard and so fast to try to get all of the trade off of America, or as much of it as possible, is one, so that we can rely on ourselves, which makes absolute sense. Like, I don't disagree with that. I think every single party that runs in Canada and most people think that that's a good idea, that we should be more self-reliant. But to strip trades out of America and shift them to different places around the world, they have less than 12 months to do it. That's why Carney's rushing to get this done, and specifically the pipeline rushing to get it done before, well, at least have all of the premiers on board before August 1st, which is the 35% trade date where it starts, where America's put 35% tariffs on us, right? So again, it's all about crunching the numbers and trying to make it happen in time. I don't personally agree with it. I think it's a little ridiculous, but again, I'm not the prime minister, right? Just a idiot dude.
Right now, really, is to make an educated guess as to what Trump's administration will want out of a new trade deal with Canada and Mexico.
He'll probably want us to be the 51st
it falls
state.
largely to Trump's discretion, which leads us to perhaps the single biggest problem in negotiating anything trade-related with the United States. It goes without saying, Trump and his team see trade as leverage to get what they want.
Of course, it seems fair that you should pay a tariff to do business with the greatest customer on earth, the American consumer.
For Trump, tariffs are often transactional and perpetually subject to change. See an industry that needs shoring up, whether it's steel, aluminum, cars, lumber, pharmaceuticals, energy, slap a tariff on imports. Feel like Canada and Mexico don't adequately police fentanyl at the U.S. border? Slap a tariff on imports. Want to extract more money from Indonesia? Threaten a 32% tariff, then agree to lower it to 19% after they agreed to buy 50 American jets from Boeing.
Yeah, so that shows you where we're in a different world. The old world of trade agreements was you talked about each country's tariffs and bilateral trade across the border. And now what you see with the Indonesia agreement is that other issues will be brought in, defense issues, foreign policy issues. President Trump doesn't have any strong ideals, or at least strong attachment to the idea of free trade.
You also have to remember that tariffs are maybe Trump's most long-standing political position. He's been talking about these things for decades. It seems to be something that he wanted to do long before they became something that he could use for leverage as he became president.
I think a lot of people are tired of watching other countries ripping off the United States. Japan is a money machine. Saudi Arabia is a money machine. Why aren't these countries, these wealthy money machines, paying us for the defense of their freedom?
And he's slowly getting exactly what it is that he wants. I mean, America just the other day, just yesterday, I believe, announced the largest deal with any country ever in the history of America. And that was America and Japan. I think it was a $500+ billion deal. And America is supposed to get, I think, up to 90% of the profits of said deal. That's absolutely wild. That's so much money for America.
In their nations.
This is a fundamentally different way of seeing the moving parts of a trade relationship, really, than we've seen for a long time. I'm not saying Trump invented tariffs, but he certainly seems to see them more as a tool of domestic political policy than any kind of stable economic framework.
We all know he can say one thing one day, and he'll be out on Fox News or wherever, changing everything.
There's been things going on that we don't like, and things going on where they took advantage, and hopefully we'll be fine with Canada. I love Canada. Frankly, Canada should be the 51st state.
One of the problems with the Trump administration is it's a moving target in terms of trade policy. So even if USMCA is renegotiated, you want to have a solid agreement that will last at least 5 years, if not more. You don't want to reach a whole new agreement that provides for duty-free treatment, and then a year later, the U.S. administration comes up with a new justification, whether it's fentanyl or migration, to overturn the whole agreement.
So this weaponized uncertainty has evolved as a tool of the administration, not knowing what's going to happen, or the unpredictability of the administration increases their leverage.
And even Trump's own deals aren't necessarily immune to his own changing opinions.
We have big deficits with Canada, like we do with all countries. I mean, I look at some of the deals made, I say, who the hell made these deals that are so bad? If I look at some of these agreements, I'd read them at night and I'd say, who would ever sign a thing like this?
The answer, of course, is he did. Kuzma, the USMCA, that's his deal, negotiated during his first presidential term, and whose terms he now believes need re-examining.
He feels that Canada has taken advantage of the agreement, misconstrued what was negotiated, and it needs to be redealt.
What this all signals?
I mean, the thing that Canada has taken advantage of the most with America is the defense. I mean, Canada has failed year after year after year of literally just meeting our minimum NATO contribution limit, 2%. Trudeau was at 1.1, 1.2%. Only this year did Prime Minister Carney actually say that we're going to reach 2% and is pledging to invest a bunch of money. But until something actually happens, I think everyone just kind of remain skeptical, because we dealt with 10 years of this is going to happen and that's going to happen, yet nothing ever happened. So Trump's, anger and frustrations with the Canadian government is warranted. I mean, for crying out loud, I'm angry with the Canadian government. Chances are, if you're watching, especially this late in the video, you're angry and not happy with the Canadian government. So imagine how it must be on the other end of the deal, where you're not a citizen, but you're supposed to have an actual, country to country relationship, and it's not working out.